It's more than just another radio show. It's a beacon of truth. Fasten your seatbelt and find out why they call Deacon Harold Burke-Sivers the dynamic deacon. Join Deacon Harold for a fast-paced hour that sheds encouraging light on today's culture. Welcome to Beacon of Truth with your host, Deacon Harold Burke-Sivers.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Beacon of Truth. I am your host, Deacon Harold Burke-Sivers, and you're listening on the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network. Well, happy Thanksgiving to each and every one of you out there. I hope you're having a truly blessed day with your family and friends and loved ones. If you were able, I hope you're able to participate in the holy sacrifice of the Mass today. Of course, the Eucharist means thanksgiving, right? So we give thanksgiving to God for all his blessings in our life. And I also want to remember today in a special way two groups of people. One, those who are experiencing the loss of a loved one for the first time. This is the first Thanksgiving without your spouse who may have passed away. This may be the first Thanksgiving without your child, who you may have lost a child. So this also may be a Thanksgiving of firsts for many people. So we want to remember them in our prayers, especially today. And also we want to remember the homeless, right? Those who go without today, because today is about food and festivity as part of the celebration. And there are many people who are not going to eat today, right? One of the things that we used to do in our parish, especially when the kids were younger, we would have a Thanksgiving meal. Well, we have Mass first in the morning, and then we'd have go over to the parish hall and get set up and have a Thanksgiving meal for anyone who's homeless or shut-ins, those who really have no one. No family or friends to remember them or take care of them. On Thanksgiving, we invite them to the parish, and we wouldn't put out paper plates and plastic utensils. We'd actually pull out our best china and glasses, and we have a full. The women and some of the men of the parish would come and prepare a full Thanksgiving meal, and it would be served to the folks that came by the youth of the parish. And so my kids participated in that. And then we'd have a little bit of a program. Obviously, we want to talk about prayer. We talk about a little bit about the parish. If they're not familiar with Immaculate Heart, we'd introduce them to the parish and tell them about our Mass times and things like that. And we also have bingo, and we play for like Christmas gifts for the kids. Gloves and coats and scarves and hats and things that people needed while they're living on the street. So it was a really joyous time. We did that for years. But it's just one of those things, like so many parishes, we have those folks who coordinated that and volunteered, got older, retired, and no one kind of followed up and to take their place. So we don't do that anymore at Immaculate Heart. But one thing that we still do is that we work with a local food bank, and we prepare. We get turkeys and all the food stuffs, and we do deliver Thanksgiving and Christmas boxes to families in our neighborhood, to poor families in our neighborhood. We've done that for years, and the kids have done that with me as well. In fact, for a few years we did it as a family. We would take the boxes and deliver them to families in the neighborhood. It was a very humbling experience. It really was. We go into a house and the kids wouldn't have shoes. I mean, and it's funny what your kids notice. Like we'd leave a house and they say, "Daddy, why do they smell like that?" Or, "Daddy, where are their shoes?" Or, "Daddy, where's their daddy?" Because so many of these houses we'd come to were run by single moms with no dads there. And I remember one time we were dropping off a box, and the kids in the house that lived there were so excited because they were presents wrapped up, and obviously they were excited because they're getting presents for Christmas, and Mom was going through the boxes, looking at what we brought. Now, at first you think maybe that's being ungrateful. Why is she looking, to see? No, she wasn't. I've seen that look before. She wasn't looking there to see what we brought. She was looking through that box to see how long this is going to last. How long can I make this last? Again, it's very beautiful, very humbling, and it really created a heart for service within my own children. To this day, all of our kids do volunteering, not because they're all adults now, right? So they don't need hours for school, service hours that they have to do for school. They do it because they want to. They do it because they see there's a larger picture out there. They do it because of something that we did as a family. They saw the impact that it had on the families we were serving, and so they wanted to continue that into their own adulthood. So I'm very proud of my kids for still having a beautiful heart for serving those that are less fortunate than us. And especially, there's so many cities around the United States today where they have a tremendous homeless problem. Portland is one of them, San Francisco, Los Angeles. I mean, just name any. And they didn't have to be a big city, right? I mean, this is a problem that's pervasive throughout our country. And so in a special way today, on this Thanksgiving, we're celebrating with food, family, friends, football, and all of that. As we're doing our prayers before the meal, just remember, if you can, in your hearts, all those today who are not going to be celebrating with the great joy that we are today. And I don't want to bring things down, today at Thanksgiving, but I think it's important that we remember what this day is truly all about, giving thanks and glory and honor and praise to God. And we have a great guest today, a good friend of mine, Deacon Dominic Cerrato, and he's one of the foremost authors and speakers on the Diaconate in the United States. His work has brought fruit and life to the Diaconate. And but today we're talking about a book that's a pretty significant departure from the work that he's done before. It's a work of fiction called Battle in the Pacific, the story of Commander Ernest Evans and the USS Johnston. Wow, I mean, it's a very, very different book. So we're going to be talking about that today on Beacon of Truth. And as usual, we have a great group of people that work so hard every day to bring you this show. We have Matt Gabinski screening calls and Charles Beery doing social media. And the one and only producer whose day is today. This is Thanksgiving Day is the day of Ace McKay. So Ace, brother, I'm glad you found time to do the program today.
That's right. Happy Thanksgiving. I am very thankful for you and for this show and the opportunity. We're not even a full year yet, and it's just been so great, the blessings that God has brought us through being able to not only build our friendship, but then seeing what God has done through that. I think we got a comment just a few weeks ago. Someone said they listened to music differently as a result of listening to this show. So I take that as like a haiku moment for us as a part of the Beacon of Truth family.
Yes, absolutely. I too am grateful to do this show every day. I had another radio show before, and like fine wine, all good things must come to an end. But when I was approached for the opportunity to do this show, and to be able to shape the show in a way that is unique in the Catholic radio world, that's fun, but also very informative. It's being able to shape the show in the way that we have, so that it really fits the mission of what we're doing, right? Bringing people to a deeper love and intimacy of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, because that's
Amen.
what we're here to do.
Yeah.
To bring Jesus Christ, the way, the truth, and life, to people all over the world. So So I'm thankful for you, Ace, and
Thank you, sir.
for our friendship and teaming up to do this show together every day.
That's right. I did want to find out, though, since we're not at the same table today, are you a two-plater before you go to the dessert, or are you one plate dessert and then you come back later? Like, what's your norm?
Oh man, that's a good one. I usually like to do a two plate, and so what we do is we eat, and usually someone gets seconds of something.
Right.
Either it's more turkey or more stuffing or more beans or something, and then we take a break, usually card game, television, something, and then back to the dessert later, a little bit later.
Perfect. I love it. I love it.
All right. Deacon Dominic Cerrato is our guest on this Thanksgiving edition of Beacon of Truth. We're talking about his great new book, Battle in the Pacific, the story of Commander Ernest Evans and the USS Johnston. Send us an email, beacon@ewtn.com. Yeah, nice little upbeat for Thanksgiving today.
That's
Lift
right.
up the spirit.
You got to be thankful for the jam.
Yes. Sometimes you just got to play those power chords, man.
That's right. That's what I love about my house. The evening crowd is a lot more musical, and so we typically make sure that the tunes, and sometimes we end up in the basement jamming a little bit, so who knows what the rest of my night will be once I get back home, but always thankful for my Thanksgiving in droves. So I have the family section and then the friends and family section. It's fantastic.
Oh, nice. Yeah, that's how you do it, And again, you want to, also this could be a great time for healing for people too, right?
Yeah.
Rifts within families, bring everybody together, and life is short, you don't want to live life with regret. So,
Right.
Bring that healing in. And music could be a great way to bring healing, right? To make
Agreed.
connections. So
Very
think
thankful for
about
music. Yes.
We listen to Beacon of Truth. I'm your host, Deacon Harold Burke-Sivers, and on this Thanksgiving Day, happy Thanksgiving to everyone. We have a wonderful guest on the show, Deacon Dominic Cerrato, to talk about his wonderful work of historical fiction, very different from the books that he's written in the past. This one is called Battle in the Pacific, the story of Commander Ernest Evans and the USS Johnston, coming up here on Beacon of Truth. Would love to hear from you today. Send us an email, beacon@ewtn.com.
Want to remind you, maybe you've been watching the parade or the game today. Well, if you're an Amazon Fire TV subscriber, just know that EWTN is always there for you, and you already have your high-speed internet, so you can stream your favorite shows and radio programs. Beacon of Truth, of course, being on that list. But if you are a Amazon Fire TV fan or planning to for the holidays, just know that you can search EWTN Radio.
All right. Well, you hear that music? That means it's time to break open God's Word in the Psalms, the book of sung praises, the Jewish Psalter, and also, actually, the Psalter for Christians. We use the Psalms in each and every holy sacrifice of the Mass. And today, we're taking a look at, continuing our look at Psalm 81. And remember, this Soulful Psalms segment is its own podcast. You can go to your EWTN app or Podcast Central, EWTN.com, or Spotify or iTunes or whatever your favorite podcast medium is to listen to these Psalm reflections each and every day. So we're continuing with Psalm 81. So Psalm 81 is in Book 3 of the Psalms, Psalm 70. 73, Psalms 73 to 83 within Book 3 of the Psalms are written by Asaph, right? So Asaph means gather in Hebrew, right? Then 84, 85, 87, 88 are the sons of Korah. 86 is David. 80 and 88 is also it's sons of Korah, but also Haman, who is one of the Ezrahites, and Ethan is Psalm 89. Ethan, Nathan in Hebrew. All right, So we already talked about the prescript, which is the entire first verse of this psalm, for the choir master upon the getith of Asaph. So Asaph means gather. One of the superintendents of the musical guild of the Jewish temple, and the getith is an ancient lap harp of Goth. Right. So this, I'm sure that when David defeated Goliath and then went on with his armies to defeat the Philistines in Gath. We see this in First Chronicles. That this was one of the instruments that they got from Gath, and David, I'm sure, used this when he composed some of the Psalms. Right. So let's dive in now at verse 10. All right. Let there be no strange god among you, nor shall you worship a foreign god. I am the Lord your God, who brought you up from the land of Egypt. Open wide your mouth, and I will fill it. All right, so Asaph is reminding us again, because remember, there are pagan cultures living all around the Israelites, and there's a temptation to be like everybody else, right? To go with the flow, to follow what everybody else is doing. And Asaph here is reminding us that yes, we're surrounded by cultures that worship these foreign gods, these strange gods, but don't follow them, right? Let's stay on the course. And in fact, they're putting words into God. I am the Lord your God. So they're speaking on behalf of the Lord to his people. And remember what I did. I brought you up from the land of Egypt. Open wide your mouth and I will fill it. All right. So this is Thanksgiving Day, right? So we're talking about filling our mouths with food. But it's not just filling our mouths with the food that will sustain us for life, but filling us with words of life, with works of mercy and justice, right? So God just fills not just our stomachs, but fills our lives with his incredible love and rich mercy. Right? And in verse 12, but my people did not heed my voice, and Israel would not obey me. So I left them in their stubbornness of heart, to follow their own designs, right? It's important if we make, because our relationship with God is free, right? Remember in Genesis chapter 2, it says, God says to Adam, you may freely eat of every tree in the garden, but the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat, for the day you eat of it you shall die, right? And mavet, death there means to be cut off from God's life. So they have the relationship with God is free. That's one of the foundational tenets of covenant relationship. The relationship has to be free or else it's not love. So you're free to say yes and you're free to say no. So Asaph is reminding us here that if we say no to God and to accept his invitation to loving and life-giving communion, that God's, okay, well, you made this choice to say no to me. Well, there's going to be repercussions. Not that God's going to do something to them, but that, he said he left them in their stubbornness of heart. Okay, to follow their own designs. Okay, you go do your thing, but just know that when you separate yourself from my love, good things usually don't follow from that. So just a beautiful reminder of always having the courage to follow God's law, right, and follow his love working in our lives. And speaking of God's love working in our lives, we want to bring in now my good friend, Deacon Dominic Cerrato. He's the director of the Office of the Diaconate for the Diocese of Joliet in Illinois. He's also the editor of our Sunday Visitors, The Deacon magazine, which I have the great honor and privilege of writing a regular column for. And he's also the director of a wonderful apostolate called Diaconal Ministries. He has a BA in theology from Franciscan University and master's and doctoral degrees from Duquesne University in Pittsburgh, where he graduated with a doctorate in systematic theology. He's written a number of books, beautiful books on the diaconate, which is what he's known for, especially obviously in the diaconate community. But today, we're talking about a different book, Battle in the Pacific, the story of Commander Ernest Evans and the USS Johnston. So I'd like to bring onto the show, kind of introduce him to everybody here, my good friend, Deacon Dominic Cerrato. Deacon, welcome to Beacon of Truth. It's so great to have you with us.
Yes, good morning and happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you. How are you celebrating today?
Well, with family, and I could smell the turkey, and it's killing me. But I will offer it up.
Amen. So, Deacon, obviously we know each other well. We met when we were speaking together for the John Paul II Foundation for Life and Family. And then we become friends over the years. You edit the Deacon magazine, and I've been to Joliet, to speak to deacons there. You actually did our retreat for deacons here in our Diocese of Portland. So we saw each other not too long ago. So tell the people here who may not be familiar a little bit about your background, your kind of vocation story, so we can get to know you a little bit.
Sure. Well, my vocation starts, of course, at least the vocation to the diaconate and marriage occurred at the same time when I met my wife some 42 years ago. And as I dated her, she said things like, well, I'm Catholic. And I'm like, yes, I'm Catholic too. We got that connection. And then she said, my father's studying to be a deacon. And I said, what's a deacon? And slowly but surely, as I fell in love with her, I saw the spark of God's love in her eyes. And I drew closer not only to her, but also heard the slight murmurings of a calling. Later, when we got married, I felt that calling even stronger now. I was 22 years old. I was in the Navy at that particular time. I was in 4 years. I had 4 more years to do. And after I got out, I decided that, well, if I'm going to be called to be a deacon, I got out at 26, you got to be at least 35 to be ordained as married. I'm going to be the best deacon I could be. So I studied theology, realized that, as St. Anselm says, it's faith seeking understanding. And I discovered that as I learned theology more and more, it was like putting jigsaw puzzle pieces together. And the face of God appeared, and there's only one thing left, Deacon Harold, and that's to fall in love with him. And so I was ordained the first deacon of the Diocese of Joliet, first permanent deacon. And then I brought sort of my theological studies, particularly John Paul II, to be able to speak about what it means to be a deacon, what it means to be a servant, not only for deacons, but for all of us who are called to follow Jesus Christ, who came not to be served, but to serve and give his life as ransom for the many.
Oh, beautiful. I love that. And so you've also now used your vast education to write about the diaconate, and obviously, I mean, I think that your work deserves more spotlight than it has. I mean, because you have some really profound insights, especially in the connection between the diaconate and the priesthood and the episcopacy, the bishops. Something that I'm going to be using some of your work actually to share at a conference at Steubenville coming up here, where I want to exploit that a little more, especially in the light of this whole thing about trying to ordain women deacons and things like that. And you serve on the Vatican Commission, right? For looking at the commission, looking at this whole, studying this whole female deacon thing. So how'd you get on that?
How'd I get on that? Well, that's a good question. I only found out after it was printed in the Vatican News. So I'm not exactly sure how I got on that. I was surprised. I read the article, and then I was shocked to see my name in the article. I guess the free will is suspended when it comes to the Vatican, although when Peter calls, you go. And so it was because I think of my writings. The other thing is that in the United States, the diaconate is really exploding in terms of its numbers. And so they wanted to get an American theologian who, goodness gracious, let's have a deacon on a commission for a deacon. They had never done that before. I think I'm the only deacon in modern history to be in a papal commission about the diaconate. But that's how basically they called me, and we went, and we're continuing that process.
All right. We're talking with Deacon Dominic Cerrato about his book, The Battle in the Pacific. Would love to hear from you on this Thanksgiving Day. Send us an email, beacon@EWTN.com.
It's the bass that makes it taste so good.
Yes. Yeah. This is a good thing to listen to. Your have your Thanksgiving meal, and maybe take a little break before you go back for seconds or dessert.
Yeah.
There
is a playlist for the main meal and then a dessert playlist. Those are two totally separate things.
Yes, there you go.
And then you need the boogie woogie for after, so you can get up and move around.
Yeah, exactly.
After the tryptophan has kicked in.
Yes, need something to kind of wake you up a little bit.
Yeah, agreed.
So you can enjoy that. What an apple pie or pumpkin pie, or we used to have mince pie, mince meat pie. My mom used to make that, and that's something. I don't think I've had that since my mom died.
You should bring it back in tribute to Mom.
Yeah. Maybe I'll have the girls do that. They made a traditional. I'm from Barbados. So we had a traditional West Indian dessert from Barbados called sweet bread or coconut bread.
Yeah.
They made that a few years ago. They attempted. I mean, it was really good, but it wasn't like Mom's.
There's a 3x5 card laying around somewhere that has her recipe on it. You just have to find it.
Yeah. The problem is, though, that like many Bajan women back in my mom's time, they didn't write anything down. They just did it by heart. They learned from their mom and passed it down. But now this new generation, not interested in learning those recipes or cooking and focusing on careers and things like that. So, but anyway, I very much appreciate the effort that the girls did. It was still very, very good.
That's awesome.
All right. Well, you listen to Beacon of Truth on this Thanksgiving Day. I'm your host, Deacon Harold Burke-Sivers, and we have another deacon on with us today, Deacon Dominic Cerrato, to talk about his great new book of historical fiction, The Battle in the Pacific, the story of Commander Ernest Evans and the USS Johnston. You want to be with us today? Would love to hear from you on this Thanksgiving Day. Send us an email, beacon@ewtn.com.
Of course, we want to let you know that Open Line Friday, as you start to do a little Black Friday shopping, get it out of the way early so you can then make all of your questions known. Colin Donovan helping to do that with EWTN Open Line. You can check that out 3 Eastern. That is going on tomorrow afternoon here on EWTN Radio.
All right. Well, we're talking with Deacon Dominic Cerrato, who is the Director of the Office of the Diaconate for the Diocese of Joliet in Illinois. He was ordained as the first permanent deacon for the Diocese of, was it Steubenville or was it Joliet?
No, Steubenville. I'm incarnated in Steubenville.
Incarnated in Steubenville, right? About 35 years old, right? And so right around the same age that I was ordained. And Deacon Dominic is a national speaker, author, retreat master, written so beautifully and eloquently on the diaconate. And serves as a commission on the Vatican, actually, studying the question of women and the diaconate. But we're here today to talk about a great new book of his on a work of historical fiction, Battle in the Pacific, the story of Commander Ernest Evans and the USS Johnston. So, Deacon Dominic, I mean, obviously this book is a pretty big departure from what you've done in the past. So what was your motivation? How'd you get this idea of writing a book like this?
Well, I think about 25 years ago or so, I read about this story, and it really touched my heart. It's a David and Goliath story that really turned the tide of the war in the Pacific. General MacArthur had landed the troops to retake the Philippines and Leyte Gulf. The fleet had been lured away. The Japanese were looking for a decisive battle, and standing in the way of this massive armada, and give you a sense, this armada, just the battleship alone weighed more, or displaced more water than the entire ragtag American fleet protecting Leyte Gulf. And it was a battle of epic proportions, many of whom lost their lives. And what touched me about it was the selflessness, the camaraderie, the willingness to fight. Now, look, these aren't martyrs in the sense that we understand martyrs in our tradition, but they are in a certain sense, because they died for the Christ they saw in the eyes of their wives, in their children, and their mothers and fathers. They may not even have known Christ by name, but they rose to the occasion and really turned back this massive fleet, which would have decimated the Marines that had landed on Leyte Gulf. Many of them, including Commander Evans, died in the whole thing. So it motivated me, and I wondered, why hasn't anybody done a movie or written a book? Now, there are books, and the books tend to be very historic in nature, but I wanted to go underneath the story. I wanted to understand the motivation. I wanted to connect the pathos of the families, of the men, of the drudgery at sea, of all of the action that takes place. I also wanted to put in a little lightheartedness, because being on a Navy ship, they're always wise guys. So I have characters called Cabot and Morelli, who sort of model after Abbott and Costello, and they bring sort of a liveliness to it. But I also wanted to bring out, for example, many blacks served aboard as cooks during that time, and yet they fought in the battle and they died. I needed to make tribute to that. There were so many things. There were Catholic elements in it, but it's a way to proclaim the gospel for me in a very implicit way, that people who would not be open to the virtues of our Judeo-Christian tradition will be touched by them and maybe hear the gospel in a different way so they can hear it in a fuller way.
Yeah, I love that. And what's so awesome about that is that we talk about effective evangelization. That's a topic that we return to over and over again on this show. And one of the ways that we open doors to people who may not be open to faith or don't have much of a knowledge of the Lord is through music. Mm-hmm. So we use that as a vehicle to introduce people, to get them listening, to get them interested in what we're saying, using, if you will, music as a lure. If you're going fishing and you got that lure, and so we're trying to use music as a way of bringing people in. And so you're using this actual historical event, but then adding fictional elements to it in order to draw people not only into the story, but into, if you will, an introduction to what it means to be Catholic, to give your life, lay down your life for your friends that Jesus talks about. Mm-hmm. So I think it's a brilliant way. And you served yourself, right, in the Navy, you mentioned a little earlier.
That's right, 8 years in the Navy. So I was able to connect on that level. I was on a small ship, so I understand what it's like to be bobbing around like a cork in the middle of the ocean. And again, the camaraderie, the drills, everything from the drudgery to those special moments, because these men, they were away from home. Many of them had never even seen the sea before, coming from the heartland of the United States. And yet they're thrown together, and it's a country galvanized against a serious threat to the freedoms. The other thing that's important here, Deacon Harold, is that I wanted this generation to understand that the freedom we enjoy came at the cost of blood. This just it, and I think that sometimes we don't recognize it. We feel entitled to it, and there's a certain sense that we have, by virtue of our dignity, a certain appropriateness to our ourselves and our freedoms, but it comes at a cost. And in this Thanksgiving, we need to be thankful for the people who lost their lives for our freedom. No greater love than this, as you said, than to give up your life for a friend.
Yes, amen. Beautiful. We're talking with Deacon Dominic Cerrato. He's the director of the Office of the Diaconate for the Diocese of Joliet and the editor of Our Sunday Visitors, the Deacon magazine, and director of a wonderful apostolic diaconal ministries. We're talking about his brand new book, his work of historical fiction based on a true story, but he adds some beautiful fictional elements to kind of draw you in more into the story. Battle in the Pacific, the story of Commander Ernest Evans and the USS Johnston. So in the book, how do you do character development? Did you have to study the life of Commander Evans and some of the other people on the boat there? Is there historical records that you use to develop the characters, or did you kind of take a little liberty and ad lib a little bit in order to bring these characters to life?
Yeah, the characters themselves, exist, and we do have some record of them. I was also able to find some relatives still alive to be able to speak about this. So, and moreover, there's an entire organization dedicated to Taffy 3. That's the task force that was there. So I was able to get some records. I was able to certainly get the after action reports on the battles and so forth. But I was able to glue it together from what I understand about the characters. And I wouldn't say embellish, that's too strong of a word, but I sort of teased out elements. I mean, Commander Evans, the real hero of this story, they're all heroes, but his wife, Margaret, I was able to find something about her. His two boys, Ernest and Jerry, what they were like, what age they were, and those kinds of things. But I tried to write it, so I tried to connect these historical characters, the elements of faith involved. That was an important part of that. So there are some characters that are fictional characters, like Cabot and Morelli, the two goofs on board. But Dr. Sam Carney, there was a doc on board. I don't know if his name was Sam Carney or what, but he's the Catholic element to it. And his son, he meets his son who eventually dies in a plane crash. But I was able to bring that in so that you're not only seeing the events, you're seeing it through the eyes. And I wrote it in a Clancy style way. So you're smelling the smells, you're seeing the fabrics, you're feeling the roll of the waves, you're smelling the gunpowder, the flashes, and so forth. And so there are great books out there. The Last Stand of the Tin Can Sailor by James Hornfisher is probably the best historic, but I wanted to get beyond this historic elements. And this is what we do all the time. The Chosen does that. So many things. Gibson's The Passion does that. To sort of bring, so it's not a work of fiction, but there are fictional elements that are woven together in imaginative, creative storytelling to bring about a deeper truth of the story that just facts alone can't do.
Yeah, that's wonderful. This is also a great way to remember and be thankful for those who served, our country. Like you said, the freedom comes at a price, right? And our Lord is I think the quintessential example of that. Mm-hmm. Our freedom from sin and freedom from death cost the Lord his life, Mm-hmm. Often we have people that say, well, obviously no one wants to go to war. I mean, we always want to try to find peaceful solutions to our problems, but in some cases that's just not the case, and we have to defend those freedoms that we enjoy, that we can't take for granted. And so, sadly, we may have to go to war. We may have to fight, but I look at the cross and I look at the battle that Jesus fought for us there. We pray in the Holy Sacrifice of the Mass. He's the Agnus Dei qui tollit peccata mundi, right? The Lamb of God who takes away the sins of the world. And we also remember all those martyrs who died rather than deny Jesus, right? And it says the blood of the martyrs are the seedbed for the church. And also, and likewise, when you think about World War II and the other wars that we fought, and the freedoms that we enjoy, those are things that we can't take for granted. So I'm so grateful to you for bringing this story to life. So when in the war did this actually happen? Like, how far into World War II was this battle?
This was 1944. In fact, just last month we celebrated 80 years of this battle. So it occurs toward the end, and the Japanese had a particular strategy. They knew they couldn't outlast the Americans, and what they tried to always do is have a decisive battle, Pearl Harbor being one of those, to take the fight out of the enemy. And this is what they tried to do. They were losing the war. This was a chance to recapture the Philippines. So this is toward the end of the war. Not quite. We've got another good year left before it ends, several months before it ends. But and you could say this is the last gasp of the war.
Okay. All right. Yeah. And so it was after this that they dropped the atomic bombs then.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, wonderful. We're talking with Deacon Dominic Cerrato, who is the Director of the Office of the Diaconate in the Diocese of Joliet, Illinois. He's also a prolific speaker, and author, and retreat master. He's now a novelist. I mean, he's already an author, writing books and scholarly papers and articles about the theology and spirituality of the diaconate. But now he's now a novelist. Recently published a work of historical fiction that we're talking about today, called "Battle in the Pacific: The Story of Commander Ernest Evans and the USS Johnston." And how can is this book available? Like, who published? Is this self-published, or did you have a
Yeah,
publisher for
this
this?
is available on Amazon. They can go to my website as well, which is battleinthepacific.com, one word, battleinthepacific.com. They'll find out more. There's backgrounds. There's the reason why I wrote this, and really an exercise of my own diaconate in serving the church in a more, let's say, a way that reaches to audience that would otherwise not receive it.
Yeah, and it says as part of that, you talk about not just the historical events, but you create a vivid portrayal of the complexities of war, the weight of loss, and the indomitable will to prevail. So, this is a battle that was lost, right? But how did this battle play into the overall effort in World War II?
Well, it actually wasn't lost. The
Okay.
tenacity of Taffy 3, the small task force, was such that the Japanese turned around. I mean,
Yeah.
so they went basically as soon as they see this big fleet come up, they lay smoke, which is a strategy to obscure the other ships, and then Evans orders his small destroyer directly into the enemy, and as they're firing at him, he's chasing splashes because they're unlikely going to hit the same place again. He's got to get real close because he's got smaller guns, but he's going to pepper them. He's going to blind them, and he's going to do what he can so that the other forces can come in. And so the tenacity just has them turn around. He blows the bow off of one of the ships, and they just say, there might be more after this. We're going to turn around, and they leave. So in a certain sense, while he died and others died in this whole battle, the reality is their tenacity turned them around and saved the men. Over 10,000 men now landed on Leyte Gulf.
Wow. Again, that sacrificial nature that we hear so often when it comes to war. And these stories need to be told, of these wonderful soldiers who sacrifice their lives for their brothers and sisters, and for all of us, you know. So did you get into the book of kind of the aftermath, like, the impact on the families or anything like that?
Yeah, a little bit afterwards. Most certainly, I take us from the beginning. I sort of do a come around. In the beginning, I speak about Commander Evans's Medal of Honor award, and then I take us back in time through the battle and end up there. So he's awarded the Medal of Honor. I also take us into 2019 when they found the wreck, one of the deepest wrecks, and they realized how his it was like Swiss cheese, his ship. It was bombarded so bad. And he actually, his shirt is blown off, two fingers are blown off. He runs aft after steering to steer the ship, and he goes back into the battle. He goes back into the battle after that. At one point when he was sinking, a Japanese ship pulled alongside and saw his men, and they thought, well, we're dead. And the Japanese commander salutes the men for their resoluteness in the battle before retiring and retreating with the rest of them. So it's a very powerful story of this. It literally poured out of me, Deacon. Poured out of me in 2 months. I didn't even tell my wife. It was one of those things where at night I was writing. And then I said to her, I'm thinking about this book. She rolls her eyes like, you have time for a book. And I'm like, oh, here's the manuscript. So I don't recommend, I didn't lie to my wife. I just didn't tell the truth for 2 months.
Well, but we're all the beneficiaries of your clandestine efforts there. So now we have a book that's seen the light of day, and I think will bless many. So are you marketing this to people in the armed services then?
Well, my reason for doing this is purely a tribute to the men. I have so many other things going on, so I've put it out there. If it's picked up as a movie, fine. If it's not, that's fine too. I just wanted to give honor to the men who did that. So I'm not doing any major marketing right now. My focus is entirely on the church and the diaconate.
Oh, okay, wonderful, wonderful. So this is so great that you had the time and the wherewithal to put together this. I guess a kind of a side project, if you will, but
Hmm.
hopefully one that really speaks again to the power of the human spirit, that speaks to the meaning of service and sacrifice. Which we talk about a lot in our country, and that hopefully people appreciate the efforts of the men and women who continue to serve in the armed services today, and the sacrifices that are made for their families. Being away for long periods of time, and especially now in the world, we got so many conflicts going on in different parts of the world, in the Middle East, with Israel and Palestine, and we have, of course, the war with Russia and Ukraine. We have tensions building. It looks like with China and Taiwan and Korea. I mean, it's just and so I notice, in fact, when I'm home, I do a little 5 mile walk, and the track near our house that I walk around is right near the airport. And over the past several months, I've heard, increased activity with the F-16s,
Hmm.
doing their touch and goes, and I'm like, wow, because you didn't hear that for a long time. All of a sudden, over the past few months, you see increasing frequency. So, I mean, so all of that, uh, eh, could raise a level of being disheartened or frightened even, at the potentialities of what could happen. But even in the midst of all that, I think what your book brings to the fore is ultimately we have to trust in God. We have to trust in God and do the things that we were created for, that He put us on this earth to do. And clearly, Commander Evans was a husband and a father, but he was also a commander. He had responsibilities to his men and to his country and to his ship, and he lived that out even at the cost of his own life. So I think, uh, given everything that's going on in the world today, I think this book could be tremendously inspirational for all of us as we kind of deal with and struggle with what's going on around the world. Yeah, beautiful.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what's next for you now? So you've got this book, this wonderful book that people can get through your website or on Amazon. And what do you have going on after this?
Well, the fiction stuff is put aside. I have another book coming out in the spring with our Sunday visitor. It's called As I Have Loved You, Clerical Unity in the Heart of Christ. And it speaks about how bishops, priests, and deacons can grow closer together, both through the interior life and especially as we enter a new phase, I think, of the church with the numbers decreasing. We have the numbers of priests decreasing, religious are decreasing, but deacons are increasing. So, what does that really mean? And so that I've been working on that. There's going to be a 2026 national conference that should be announced shortly, which will focus on that. Deacons and priests, BYOP, bring your own pastor. I tell the deacons so that we can gather together for that. So that's going on. I've got several other projects in the mix, and of course, working here in the Diocese of Joliet and visiting dioceses like your own, which I'll be returning to shortly.
Yes, yes, it was a wonderful, wonderful retreat. People may not realize that those of us who are ordained, going on retreat is a canonical requirement, right? That we go on retreat, and so I always make time in my calendar so I can attend the retreat with my brothers. Although we have to split it, we kind of have the retreat house at the monastery, the seminary, the Benedictines, Mount Angel, They just did a massive renovation. I mean, I just can't believe how beautiful that place is now compared to what it was before. But they can't house everybody, all the deacons. Yeah, the number of deacons are increasing, right? So we can't house everybody to do one retreat. So we have to split it up. Half of us go in May, and half of us go in November. So, very much looking forward to having you back here with us again, and looking forward to your other books on the diaconate. So I really want to encourage everybody out there to get to know Deacon Dominic Cerrato and his work. So how can people find, what's the best place we can go to find you and to learn more about you and to buy this book?
Oh, this book here, it's battleinthepacific.com, Battle in Pacific, one word.
Okay, battleinthepacific.com. And is there a website they can go to learn more about you?
That would be Diaconal Ministries, diaconalministries.org, one word.
All right, diaconalministries.org. All right, awesome. Well, remember, my friends, you can stream today's show by visiting Podcast Central at EWTN.com/radio. And on this Thanksgiving Day, I wish the best for you and your family. May Almighty God bless you, keep you, and protect you. The Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.